Today, we're diving into a massive, seismic shift in global power. It's something that's kind of flying under the radar, but it all kicks off with this one truly stunning statement from, of all places, America's closest neighbor. Okay, just let's let that sink in for a second. That quote comes from a key Canadian leader, and he's not in Washington, he's in Beijing. To hear those three words, New World Order, spoken by one of America's staunchest allies while standing next to its biggest rival, well, you can bet that sent some serious shockwaves through the world of diplomacy. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't some kind of accident or a slip of the tongue. Oh no, this was a signal, a crystal clear declaration that the global power balance is shifting and Canada is, well, it's picking a side. So the big question is, what on earth is going on? How did we even get here? Let's unpack it.
And this whole pivot, it wasn't just words, not by a long shot. The Prime Minister's visit to China led to some very real, concrete deals that totally flipped the script on policies Canada used to hold, in solidarity with the U.S.
Okay, so look at these numbers. This is where the rubber meets the road. China had this massive 84% tariff on Canadian canola oil. Bam! Slashed to just 15%. And what does Canada do in return? They agree to buy almost 50,000 electric vehicles from China with super low tariffs. This is a complete 180 from earlier trade disputes where Canada was firmly in America's corner.
And it goes even deeper than just oil and cars. The deals also open the door for major Chinese investment into Canadian AI and other high-tech industries. The message here could not be louder or clearer. The perception is that the future, the real futuristic tech, is now being led by the East, and Canada wants in.
So why? Why this sudden, pretty dramatic pivot from a country like Canada? Well, the sources we're looking at point to one huge factor: a disruptive U.S. foreign policy that has, frankly, pushed its closest friends away.
And this quote from the New York Times really just hits the nail on the head. It captures this growing feeling among allies that American policy has become less about what's good for the country and a lot more about the personal and family business interests of its leader. So you can see the logical outcome here, right? When your allies start to feel that your policies are unpredictable and just self-serving, they're not left with a lot of choices. They start looking around for other, more stable partners. And that forces them to realign with rival powers. Canada is just the most obvious example of this much bigger trend.
And this feeling, it isn't just a North American thing. It's also kicking off this kind of quiet rebellion over in Europe. And the way they're talking about it involves this really powerful metaphor from Cold War history.
So, picture this. At the World Economic Forum, a top Canadian official brings up this quote from the famous Czech writer and dissident Václav Havel. And Havel's whole point was that oppressive systems aren't powerful because they're actually strong. They're powerful because people just obey them day in and day out, mostly out of heat. He used Havel's famous green grocer analogy. So, under communism, a grocer has to hang a sign in his window that says, "Workers of the world, unite." Now, he doesn't believe it. Everybody knows he doesn't believe it, but he does it to avoid trouble. It's just this empty ritual of obedience. The system's entire power depends on everyone just playing along. But if one person decides to take their sign down, the whole lie is exposed, and the facade starts to crack. And then he drops the bombshell. The speaker looks out at all of these European leaders and CEOs and says this. He directly compares decades of Europe just going along with U.S. foreign policy to that grocer's meaningless sign. It was an unmistakable call to action. Stop the routine obedience and start thinking for yourselves.
So, when all this tension starts bubbling up, the conversation naturally turns to weapons, economic weapons. And it turns out Europe has a really powerful one it's getting ready, and there's another famous one that almost everyone misunderstands.
First up is something they're calling the trade bazooka. Basically, it's a defensive tool. It lets the entire EU slam the door to its huge market shut on any country that tries to use economic pressure on one of its members. But here's the supreme irony. This tool was designed with encouragement from the US to push back against China. And now, Europe is dusting it off for potential use against America itself. You can't make this stuff.
Which brings us to the big one. the weapon you always hear about, the bond bomb. The theory is pretty simple. Countries like China and Japan hold literally trillions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bonds. What if they just dumped them all at once? Wouldn't that crash the U.S. economy?
Well, the reality is a lot messier. It's not a targeted missile. It's more like a suicide bomb. The second a country tried to dump its bonds, the value of all the other bonds it's still holding would absolutely plummet. It would trigger an immediate, catastrophic financial crisis for the seller, probably even worse than the damage it would do to the U.S. It is, pure and simple, economic, mutually assured destruction. So, here's the key takeaway. The real threat isn't some dramatic Hollywood-style bomb. No, it's something much slower, much stealthier. It's the gradual, systematic move by countries around the world to replace their U.S. dollar reserves with physical gold, slowly, piece by piece, chipping away at the dollar's dominance.
All right, let's zoom out one last time, because what we're witnessing, it isn't actually new. This whole dynamic, the overreach, the alienating your friends, the rise of rivals, it's all part of this timeless historical cycle that has defined the rise and fall of pretty much every empire ever.
And this timeline just illustrates it perfectly. From its very first days, America, just like every empire before it, has expanded in the name of security. First, securing its borders from native tribes, then from European powers, then securing the sea lanes. But the thing about total security is that it's a finish line you can never, ever cross.
And that right there is the fundamental paradox. The very same drive to secure the empire, the one that leads to expansion and control, is the thing that causes it to overextend itself. It creates fear, it provokes rivals into teaming up, and it plants the seeds of its own collapse. You're never truly secure until the empire itself is gone.
I mean, we've seen this movie before, right? Over and over again, with the Romans, the Ottomans, the British. A new power rises and brings order. It expands for security. It gets too big, overextends, collapses, and then drags the world into a period of chaos until, eventually, a new order rises from the ashes.
So that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. As we sit here and watch these cracks form in the old world order, are we just watching the messy, painful birth of a more balanced, multipolar world? Or are we at the beginning of that chaotic, dangerous phase that always seems to follow when a great empire begins to fade? The signs are coming down, and what happens next is anyone's guess.